We're now joined by Sean Highkin of the Rose Garden Report. Sean, how you doing, buddy?
Doing all right, man. How about you?
Oh, it's another day in paradise. Blazers play tonight against the Houston Rockets, a team that has picked up some traction and been kind of loosely associated to what the Portland Trailblazers are aiming towards in the future. That whole vein, how do you feel about that characterization of the Trailblazers as it pertains to trying to be the Houston Rockets and how that was or wasn't taken out of context?
Well, the person that said that was our mutual friend Jake Fisher. Does a great job covering the NBA for Yahoo Sports. I do agree that kind of got taken out of. I think what he meant by it was, you look at what the Rockets were last year. I think it's more so. I think it's less so the Blazers want to be the Houston Rockets of this year, where they're probably still going to miss the play-in, as opposed to they don't want to be the Houston Rockets of last year, where the whole roster was kids and it was just a complete disaster and there was no structure or anything. And you saw what happened over the summer when the Rockets spent all that money on Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet and brought in some veterans and basically decided, we need to be competent now. And I think the context that was that comment was kind of made in by Jake on I forget what show it was that he was on, but whatever comment that was. This was before the trade deadline, when there was still questions about, are they trying to trade Jeremy Grant? Are they trying to trade Malcolm Brogdon? And I think the point that Jake was trying to make there was, no, they're not going to do that because they don't want to be last year's Rockets, where it's entirely young players and there's no structure and there's no adults in the room at all.
Sean, I was looking at some articles about this Blazers team and how a majority of some of their young players that they want to build around, Shaden, Scoot, even Ant to a degree, and then some of their older guys, Ayton, Brogdon. A lot of these guys, because of injuries, haven't been able to play together. So when you look at this team that they've tried to build, where it has some older players to help kind of lead the younger players along, would you say that so far this year, that kind of build so that they can be like the Rockets of this year in the future has been kind of derailed just because of injuries that are outside of their control? Or do you think they've still been able to largely kind of move along some of those young players and get that progression that they wanted to see from those guys?
I definitely don't think they're happy with how the season has gone. You can, on an individual level, you can look at some of the individual things with certain guys. Like Chris Murray has come on a lot lately. Duop Reed is obviously a kind of an out of nowhere success story. A couple of those guys, Scoot, before he had the injury that he's just, I think, supposed to be back from this weekend, was playing pretty well before the All-Star break. So on an individual level, you can look at it and say, yeah, there are some guys that have gotten better as the time, as the season has gone on. But I do think when you look at the season as a whole, they would have liked to see a lot more time with the guys you mentioned: Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, DeAndre Ayton. Anthony Simons missed the first 6 weeks of the season with the thumb injury. Robert Williams played 6 games and then had a season-ending knee injury. You want to be able to look at it and say, okay, these are the guys that work well together and these are the guys that don't. And just because of all of these different injuries that these guys have had, you just have not been able to see enough to decide that one way or the other. But they're going to have to make some decisions, I think, over the next 6 months with what limited data they have. It's not the amount of data that you want, but it just kind of is what it is.
Sean, the Trailblazers have an NBA most 21 games remaining. Everybody else is 20 or less. And they're currently sitting at 17 wins. The Vegas over-under was 28.5. When you take a look at that schedule, is there any danger of the Blazers creeping above that 28.5 win line?
Oh, God, no. You have to go what are they at? 5? So they have 21 games. They'd have to go 12 and what would it be, 12 and 9 the rest of the way? I don't think that's gonna happen. I think the number, Dan, when you and Sprague were on their last Jack Ramsey show, I think the number that Sprague set was 20. What was it, like 22 and a half that he had? I think that under is like perfect. That's exactly where they'll sit. I don't think they're gonna go. They're in the middle, or they're just kind of in the beginning of this 6-game homestand right now. They lost the first one to Oklahoma City. I think they get one of these tonight. They have a back-to-back with Houston tonight, Toronto tomorrow. I think they get one of those two. You can kind of land wherever you want to land on which one, but I think they get one of those two. I think they get one more on this homestand, like maybe Atlanta is one that you look at when you just look at the opponent on paper. And then, they on that giant road trip that they have later at the end of the month, they have Washington, which I think, you should be able to beat Washington. I know they lost to them earlier in the season, but that's a team you should be able to beat. But I think probably you're looking at 3, 4, maybe 5 more wins the rest of the way. It's just a matter of, which ones they are. Are you going to catch a team on a bat? I think they're pretty much, as far as where they are in the lottery standings, they're pretty much locked into 5th. Maybe there's an outside chance Charlotte catches them and they move up to 4, but I think they're pretty clear of Memphis, who's in the 6th spot. So I think their floor is the 5th best lottery odds, which is what they had last year, and they moved up to 3. But I don't think that over is, and I said that at the beginning of the season. I didn't think they were going anywhere near that over. But I think right now it's pretty safe to say they're not going to hit that.
What should Blazer fans be looking for to kind of get a glass half full type of feeling at the end of the year? If they're not going to hit their over win total, what do Blazer fans need to see from the Blazers, from certain players, from coaching, from even the front office, where you can kind of look at this and go, oh, we're moving in the right direction on this rebuild. It's year 1 of the rebuild. I know some people feel like it's year 3, but we're moving forward. We're seeing signs of life. We're seeing things that hopefully in 2 or 3 years could manifest into getting back into the playoffs.
Well, allegedly, Scoot is going to be back at some point this week, and he's listed as doubtful for tonight against Houston. I think the more likely scenario is he plays tomorrow against the Raptors, and then if that goes well, then the hope would be that he's just back after that. And Chauncey Billups did say right before the All-Star break that he was going to be playing, he was going to be starting the rest of the season. So I think if Scoot is back, that's something to watch. You've still kind of heard, you talk to people in the organization, they're still hoping that Shaedon Sharpe, who had the core muscle surgery about a month ago, is going to be able to play maybe the last 5 to 10 games of the season. And this, today is 4 weeks since the surgery. So 2 weeks from today will be the 6 weeks when they said he was going to be reevaluated. So at that point, we might have some more clarity on that. But, if they can get those two back on the floor and actually, this is obviously a lost season when it comes to the record and, wins and losses and all of that. But if they can just get those two back on the floor and you can see them together a little bit and see, how those guys actually fit together in kind of an extended look, and maybe with Anthony Simons as well. And, depending on, I don't know what's going on with the DeAndre Ayton hand thing, but if he can play a little bit with those guys too, you just want to see a little bit of those guys together, which we haven't really gotten to see pretty much all season because of the injuries. But the good news in the short term is that Scoot, I think, is supposed to be back. If not tonight, then tomorrow, hopefully.
The top 6, supposedly, Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, like that group, and Malcolm Brogdon, have played a total of 4 games together this year. And if you put Robert Williams in there, it's quite literally just a half, because it was only in game 1 before Ant tore his thumb. With that small of a sample size at the top of the team, do you think that they have any room at all to try to do anything remotely similar to what they did this year, or is the evaluation period over regardless of where they're at?
You got to do something. I think that's the thing. I'm going to look into this. I'm going to dive into this a little bit more once the season is actually over and we pivot more into off-season mode and looking towards the future mode. I'm still, just money-wise, like they're going to be, if they do nothing with the roster, if they basically just use both of their first-round picks and bring back pretty much the same roster they had last year, they're going to be over the luxury tax, and they're not going to go over the luxury tax for a team that's not even a play-in team, I don't think. So they're going to, even, it's like I said earlier, it's not ideal. They would like to have more of a sample size of these guys playing together. Obviously, you would like to, but, this is the NBA. It's never ideal circumstances. You're going to deal with injuries to guys. You're going to have to make some decisions when maybe the data that you have isn't perfect. It isn't exactly the way you want, and it just kind of is what it is. And so I'm going to be very curious to see how Joe Cronin and Mike Schmitz and the rest of the front office figure out, okay, we didn't get to see enough of these guys playing together, but did we see enough to, this is a decision we're going to have to make between this guy and this guy, or, whether this guy is worth trading for this guy or whatever the case may be. Like, they're going to have to decide some of that stuff, even if it's not with the amount of data that they want. It just is what it is. Like, this is the NBA. This stuff is never exactly the way you want it to be.
Sean, thanks for joining us, man. We appreciate you. Are you working on anything coming up here?
We'll see how this next couple of I have some. I'll say this. I have a lot of kind of good ideas in the works of like things I want to work on in the off season. But like let's get through this first. Let's get through this last 4 weeks of the season, and then we'll get to kind of some of the bigger stuff. I mean, certainly if Scoot is actually able to go tomorrow, then that's going to give maybe the rest of the stretch run of the season a little bit more juice. But just go rosegardenreport.com, subscribe, hit the paid subscription. I'm gonna have stuff coming pretty consistently over the rest of the season, and then also as we get into draft mode and free agency mode and the rest of the off season as well.
That's Sean Highkin of the Rose Garden Report. You can go to rosegardenreport.com to subscribe, follow for all of the intrepid reporting from Sean Highkin. Sean, thanks for taking some time for us, buddy. I appreciate you.
And good to talk to you guys.
Yeah, there. All right, again, that's Sean Highkin of the rosegardenreport.com. Subscribe, support local journalism. Sean and I are the guys that quite literally at every single game. The only reason I'm not there is I'm either sick or having a surgery, and Sean is there even when I'm not there. So make sure you're out there supporting him as well.